this for a while, man. Thank you so much for taking the time here.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
You as well. So the order, I was talking with Justin about this yesterday and telling him an American story takes place 40 something years ago or whatever. And yet, if somebody tells you this is a timely story that has to have great significance, but also tremendous sadness tied to it as well, seeing as what's going on, not just in America, but literally all over the world right now. So was that a driving factor for you to say yes to a project like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like this kind of hate speak or this sort of extremism started then. I mean, this is a story, this is a kind of movement and a belief and that goes back even beyond that. So being able to find a story that had this relevance and this theme, looking back to look forward, was a really, good way of sort of investigating this kind of behavior. And it's something Justin does so well. Why do people behave like this? What was it that Bob Matthews promised to these individuals that got them to follow him? And Justin unpacks individuals like this and this kind of masculinity or this kind of behavior really, really well, and looks at the environment around them and the families around them. And what he did with this story was also kind of compare and contrast that to the law enforcement, the people hunting these people and who themselves are sort of lost in causes, the cause of the Federal Bureau and the cause of law enforcement. And he created just a very interesting conversation about this kind of behavior. And as you say, terrifyingly timely, but unfortunately it's a trait that runs through and through global society.
Yeah, no, most definitely. It was so funny. I was like saying to somebody the other day, I was like, I remember when the first promo image for this released, and it was you in the middle of the street, shotgun in hand, sporting a mustache. And I just thought, that's it. I'm watching a movie. I don't even need to know what it's about right there.
That was the hope. I'm glad it worked.
Yeah. But it got me also thinking about those 70s police crime dramas that I know was heavily influenced here through Justin's direction and Zach's writing. What did you turn to when crafting this character of Terry Husk?
Well, exactly that. I mean, we did it very much as a team, inspired by this script, because that had been based on a very well-written book that looked at the case. We sort of started there. And then we started talking and reading around more agents and more cases like this back in that time, building Husk into a plausible kind of special agent with a background that really fit our desires, which was that he be broken and that he's exhausted, and what would it have taken out of him and why, emotionally, spiritually, like physically. And absolutely inspired by films of the 70s and 80s, and because the piece is set then, early 80s, really capturing that. It's a very particular era, a different kind of man, especially the kind of man Husk would have been, a slightly more male-dominated world, a slightly more misogynistic world, and sort of leaning into that heavy smoking, heavy drinking kind of broken but a noble heart.
Right.
Those were all qualities I was trying to embed in Terry.
Yeah. I mean, that didn't seem to affect you so much physically. You have a couple of scenes here where you have to run around in these gunfights in the open spaces and such. And can you tell me just a little bit about, from your perspective, I have to imagine the logistics of shooting something like that on the day has to be incredibly complicated. Can you walk me through, particularly the hotel shootout?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to be organized, because on a film like this, you don't have much time. I think we shot that whole sequence in a day.
Yeah, that's what Justin was telling me.
So, Justin is incredibly organized. He'd have already done a recce, and so he's kind of shooting it already in his head and aware of where we have to be and where the camera has to be. We had a brilliant DP and operator, Adam Archipel, who Justin had worked with before, and they kind of had this just sense of each other as director and photographer. And you get advice from, cops and agent bureau experts who are looking at how we want to film it and what an agent might do in the case of that. And you rehearse it and then you go for it. You go for it for real, and you have to be safe because you've got a weapon in your hand with blanks and you're firing at each other, and you've got hits going off around you. So it's kind of forensic, but it's also visceral.
Yeah. Bob Matthews, as people probably are aware, died in the climactic shootout that took place in Washington in the home that is raided by the FBI. I'm curious to know, had he been taken alive? Because that's what your character rather says, like we want him alive. If he had been taken alive, what do you think Terry would have wanted to ask Bob?
I don't know that it was that he wanted to ask him anything. I think he probably wanted the opportunity to unpack him and display him for what he was, and display his immorality and his argument, and the fact that he didn't practice what he preached, the sort of falsehood behind the prophecy.
Yeah.
And he saw him as a bully, he saw him as a manipulator, and I think he wanted the opportunity to expose all of that rather than leave him as this sort of martyred leader.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely sense that as well. At the end of the movie, when your character is about to take that shot, that hunt, what do you think's going through Terry's mind in that moment?
Well, I tried to find a place of rest. I think Terry feels suddenly like, the promise of the family arriving is no more. The pattern and the exhaustion of fulfilling the case but not quite getting the man has forced him to maybe think how much more he's got in him. But that nonetheless, he is still alert and aware. He's learned from his mistakes. He's not smoking. The elk appears. I just love the question. He still wonders whether it's, what is the cost of a bullet? What is, that there's a thread throughout of the shot not taken. Matthews chooses not to shoot Husk and vice versa. And then there's this elk, the hunt of the elk, and getting the shot, but not taking it, considering maybe the humanity of that.
Yeah, no,
I like the ambiguity. I love the ambiguity of it, and I love that it ends on a breath.
And I do like that you tie it back to the shot not taken, like you said, and what exactly does that imply? And I guess it's different for each individual, obviously. So going off of that too, Ty Sheridan acts opposite you in this. He, wonderfully talented actor, I think.
Yes.
What was your just dynamic working together, and what could you say about him in terms of what the relationship was like, the two of you working together?
It was important. Justin and I discussed this early on. It was really important that we create and draw as much as we could from the Husk-Jamie relationship. That we wanted it to somehow offer a symmetry to the young men following Bob Matthews and why, and Bob Matthews leading these young men into peril and down the the path of no good. And yet there's a sort of similarity with Husk, that actually Jamie suddenly is sort of enamored by this guy and the level of which he's operated as an agent, and is intoxicated by it almost, and leaves his family, you could argue, through his sort of obsession with the case. So, Justin talked a lot about me taking Ty under my wing and what have you. But Ty's a formidable guy, a very talented actor. It's not like I have anything really to show him he doesn't know already. But we fortunately, and you can't plan this, just bonded very, very quickly. He's a really approachable, warm heart, Ty.
Yeah.
And we just hit it off. And that kind of dynamic you can't create. It's there or it's not. But it meant that this warmth just grew, goodwill. And when it's naturally there, the director has the opportunity then to really harvest it and lean into that, whether it's in the script or not. And so we just, we just let it grow. And that meant we hung out. I mean, and you're spending a lot of time together anyway, sitting in these cars, chatting about life. And it's just letting something like that live and then capturing it.
Yeah. It's so interesting because earlier this year, I saw you in Firebrand, which I
Oh, yeah.
saw last year. Then I just also recently saw you in Eden, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
coming out next year.
Next year.
So you're constantly working, which I love. And a lot of actors, sometimes they are struggling to get their projects made, whether they're small indie films or like the big budget space is one that sometimes they just prefer to stay away. But you've done a great job, I think, of effortlessly going back and forth throughout your whole career. Curious to know, beyond Eden, what lies next for you?
I've just finished a series that I produced alongside Jason Bateman's Aggregate for Netflix. It's called Black Rabbit. Jason directs two of them. In fact, Justin Kurzel directs the last two, and it's written
Nice.
by Zach Balin, who wrote The Order.
Yeah.
We just wrapped that, and I'm watching the cuts of that at the moment, and I'm really excited by it. It's about a couple of brothers in contemporary New York. One is a very successful restaurateur and nightclub owner, and the other is a kind of nightmare who comes back and destroys everything. And other than that, I'm taking a bit of a break. You'd be unsurprised to hear. It has been a very busy couple of years, a really fruitful couple of years. And right now I need a little bit of downtime. But there's a potential for a job. But yeah, I'm going to probably do with Olivier Assayas, a
Oh, he's
wonderful
great.
French director, in March, April.
That's exciting. On film like The Order, 20 years ago, we'd be seeing these all the time, right? And they would be these gargantuan big hits at the box office. We still hope for that today. You never know, right? Every film you make, you never know what's going to land necessarily. But
That's
it
right.
feels like the landscape is increasingly tougher than it was before. And as I said, as somebody who works on various projects of all shapes and sizes, what is your hope right now for films of the mid-budget for adults, category, if you will?
It's about awareness and communication. What I mean by that is I'm a great believer that if you don't put now these films need a little more money than they're getting, but they don't need too much. They don't need the pressure of having to make a hell of a lot back, right? And being considered a flop. But they need the support. I'm a great believer that if you make it for the right amount and you are in the right hands, you will find your audience. But it's also about building the trust that that audience is still there. We've taken a beating, right? Whether it was COVID, whether it was the birth and the empowerment of streamers, which is a wonderful way to watch stuff. Like, who doesn't love, watching 8-part, right, limiteds or ongoing seasons? I mean, I want all of it, as long as one doesn't kill the other. I'm also a big fan of the cinema. It's also about encouraging and teaching a younger generation who maybe didn't grow up watching those kind of films in the cinema how great that experience is. I was lucky. The new Scorsese, to me, coming out in the 80s was like the new Marvel, right? I was like, we get to go and see that.
Still is.
Yeah, totally. But that's also a lesson for us to teach and encourage our kids to go to the cinema for something other than an event movie. And also that going to the cinema doesn't have to be an event. It's also just about seeing it in a communal environment in the best way.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Well, Jude, thank you so much once again for your
That's my
time
pleasure.
here. Really appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
Thanks, man. See ya.